Waiters, what's the saddest time waiting for someone you have experienced? I'm not a waiter, but once my friend and I were out at a restaurant celebrating our new apartment. There were some people sitting next to us that were in a Tinder date. The girl kept asking the guy questions about what was apparently on his profile, and he kept saying he didn't do that or just put that on there to get someone to like him. She seemed so defeated. At one point he got up without saying anything, and when she asked where he was going he ignored her. Came back about 5 minutes later when this girl looks like she's on the verge of tears. She asks where he went and he just said bathroom and went back to eating. It was awkward to witness. Frick that dude. I'm not a waiter, but I got one heck of a story. I was going for a friend's party at a restaurant, and when I got there was a kid sitting by the door. He was also coming to the party. When I told the waiters I was there for the party as well, they called my friend and he identified me immediately but had never seen the kid before. As it turned out, his friend who invited him to the party had the party days before and gave him the wrong date. We felt bad for the kid, so we let him join our party. That day I made a new friend. Reminds me of an event a group my friend was in held. They skied and held a singles skiing event. They put up flyers and sent notices out. One of the people who showed up that morning was a 13-year-old kid who wanted to try skiing. He said everyone was nice to the kid and they all made sure he had a good day his first time on the mountain. Happened to my friend. She was a hostess at a restaurant and sat this old lady at a table while she was waiting for her friend. She stayed there for a few hours asking every now and then if her friend had showed up. My friend was heartbroken and told this to her co-worker who was working the other side of the restaurant. Turns out her co-worker also had an old lady alone at a table who had been waiting patiently for her friend. The ladies got a chance to chat a bit before they left, so it was a happy ending at least. Thank God for at least one happy ending in this thread. Not a server anymore or at the time, but I still remember this one like 20 years later. My D&D group was currently that week without a place to game, so we went to the local Dennis. We told the waitress that we would be there for about 6 hours. Yes, we tipped her very well for camping that long. Anyway, about an hour into our session, this guy comes in and sits at a two-top in clear view of me. He sets a single rose on the table and sits down. When the waitress took his drink order, he was all smiles. Nothing really dramatic happens, but over the next 4 hours or so I just watch his body language change. He checks his phone like every 2 or 3 minutes. Never gets a call. Never seems to get or send a text. Finally, after the 4 hours, he just gets up, leaves a 20 on the table. He only ordered a soft drink as far as I could tell, and just walks out. No idea why, but that image of the table, a single drink, the tip, and the abandoned rose stayed with me all my life. For your own sanity, you never wait more than 20 minutes if she isn't responding to calls or messages. Okay, this story did not happen to me, but to my friend. My friend was a manager, still is, at a pretty fancy restaurant. She was working during Valentine's Day. A guy walked in, pretty nicely dressed, but not too nicely, kind of nervous. He's walked to a table for two. Since it was Valentine, the restaurant did its best to give off a romantic atmosphere. Roses on the table, love-themed dessert, etc. The guy order a water and start to wait. When the waiter tries to take his order, he tells he is waiting for someone. He waits for an hour, the 2, and then 3, each time checking his phone, trying to call someone. After a while, my friend goes to talk to him. This guy had lost his girlfriend of 6 years. He was 24 at the time, 2 years ago, and it was his first date ever since. After that, she talked to him a bit more, about him, how life is etc, etc. Turns out they had quite a bit in common, so they exchanged contact. A lot happened afterward, but they've been happily married for 2 years now. He is now 30, she is 28. He was in it for the long con of free desserts. Not my story, but my sister. There was a boy in my niece's class, think 3rd, 4th grade, kinda chubby, quiet kid. He invited people to his birthday party. My sister made my niece go to be polite. Luckily she did, cause only my niece went from the classroom. His mother was so happy she went. My sister felt so bad for him, but I think he was just happy one person came to his party. So when my niece had her birthday party at a skating rink, she invited him too. He was ecstatic. I met the boy, very good kid, and he had a blast at her party. I think some of the kids wanted to go to his party but the parents were just too lazy. Seriously parents, imagine if that was your kid's party. I make my son go to every birthday party, and all the kids, including my son, love it. My mom was embarrassed to be poor and didn't have money for other kids' gifts, but instead of being creative or offering to help, she just said I wasn't allowed to go to other kids' birthday parties. Luckily had a number of other things to keep me from becoming a weird maladjusted kid adult. Not a waiter, but I witnessed a sad experience in a NY restaurant worth sharing here on Ask Reddit. A lady sitting by herself at the table next to me just stared straight ahead and with tears in her eyes. When I asked her if she was okay, she told me that her husband had recently died and this was her first time out to a restaurant on her own. She said she had a pair of concert tickets for a performance at Lincoln Center they had planned to attend, but would now be going alone. Another first since her husband passed. When I told her that I was a musician, she asked if I'd like her extra ticket. So we went together and had a great time. After the concert, we even went out for dessert and a nightcap. She was delightful. I'll forever be grateful for the opportunity in that crowded restaurant to speak to someone who needed companionship and understanding. Had a lady probably in her late 70s, early 80s come in with her daughter for a birthday dinner. They got there early and set up some small decorations on the table, a bouquet or two, some balloons. They waited for over an hour and a half before they told me that they guessed no one was coming and they'd go ahead and order. They had invited over a dozen people, and no one even called. I told the lady that the people she invited were missing out, and we chatted for a bit. I tried to make sure that I checked in on her a lot, made small talk, cracked a few dad jokes, and while she was very sweet, you could tell she was disappointed. I mean, at her age, who knows how many birthdays you have left. At that point in your life I feel like family and friends would be the most important thing to you. They finished, thanked me, left a tip, and departed. Later that evening, about 5 hours later, two young men, about 20-25 showed up and asked if the such and such birthday party had been seated yet. I told them they'd missed a fun dinner, and that it had ended hours ago. They didn't seem to care and just ambled out. Later that evening, about 5 hours later, two young men, about 20-25 showed up and asked if the such and such birthday party had been seated yet. I told them they'd missed a fun dinner, and that it had ended hours ago. They didn't seem to care and just ambled out. That kinda sounds like they honestly got the time they were supposed to show up wrong. They had a reservation for 12 people. It was the girl's 17th birthday and she arrives first with her boyfriend. Her dad comes a few minutes later. The three of them wait about 45 minutes and decide to just order. They eat and are about to leave when the rest of her family shows up drunk. They make a scene about how they weren't hungry and had to show up so nobody would be mad at them for not coming. Eat her cake and leave. The birthday girl was crying and her dad and boyfriend were trying to console her. They sound like my pos-in-laws. This happened years ago when I was a bartender. I worked at a fairly high-end restaurant. Dress code but not too uptight. An older gentleman who I had seen multiple times before sits down at the end of the bar and he tells me what he's drinking and then also orders a second drink for his wife who is supposed to be meeting him there. 30 minutes go by and he's on his second drink while his wife still hasn't arrived. He's looking around behind his shoulder at the door and calling on his phone to no avail. Another 45 minutes passes and he finishes his wife's drink for her then closes the tab. A couple weeks go by and this man comes into the restaurant again. He has a bunch of people with him who range from old age to teens. They all look sad and are all dressed up in black. His wife wasn't in the group with them. He orders a drink for himself and another for his wife. He closes the tab then walks back to the front of the restaurant by the hostess stand with his drink but left his wife's drink behind. I was kinda busy at the time so I didn't think much of it in the moment. I later found out through one of the hostesses. No idea how she found out that he and his family were there after the funeral of a family member who had died a couple weeks prior. I did the mental calculations and it seemed to fall in the exact time frame that he had been sitting at the bar alone waiting for his wife. Now, I know that funerals usually don't take weeks to complete once a person dies so this could have all been coincidental but it seemed a little too perfect of a coincidence. It depends. Sometimes, especially when there is a cremation. The memorial service may be sometime later. I worked at Tim Hortons over 25 years ago. One day an old man came in by himself and requested a cake for a birthday. He asked that we write "Happy Birthday Angel" on it. When it was ready, he came to the counter to pay for it, flashed a huge smile and said, "It's my birthday, I'm Angel." I will never forget Angel buying himself a birthday cake. My co-workers just told me this story last week and I cried. I work at a semi-classy seafood restaurant in Southeast Michigan, and the host, who has been working there for a long time, said she had the sweetest old man who came with a single rose and vase, set it up himself and ordered a bottle of champagne, sitting by the table in a chiller and everything, and he just waited for a date that never showed. Literally cried when she told me this. Another one they had was the guy who set up the reservation, called to cancel it the day of and asked the host to please inform his date. They told him they obviously didn't have her number and he just hung up. The woman showed up dressed to the nine and was stunning apparently. His loss. I had a really bad fight with my ex following a meal at a semi-classy seafood restaurant in Southeast Michigan several years ago, and I would have rather had that fight than be that poor guy who gets stood up. Not my story. Happened to my roommate. He worked at an old diner that had a fair amount of veterans as regulars. There was one group that came in and shared a meal every 3 months and caught up with each other's lives. Been doing it since they got back from serving together in the Korean War. Over the years the group had gotten smaller as some passed on. By the time my roommate started working there, the group was down to 3, then down to 2 by the end of that year. The last 2 kept coming back for over a year until one day the last guy came in and after a few cups of coffee said, "I guess I'm all that's left." He never did come back as far as my roommate remembers. Ugh, this happened to a good friend. He's one of just 2 left of his company of 20. They served in Iraq together. They're all only 44 if they were still alive. One of them only passed 2 weeks ago. It's devastating. This is similar. A man in his 80s used to come in on his own every night, without fail. Always ordered the same thing. Was genuinely lovely to the staff. It turned out his wife had died a few years previously, and coming to the restaurant and talking to waiters was the only social interaction he had all day. We ended up giving him free meals every day just so he could keep coming. I had a dude at my bar waiting for a Tinder date. It had been like 15 minutes and a girl walks in. He perked up and smiled. He then proceeded to watch her, I can only assume very drunk self, go over to another guy of a completely different race and seemed so excited to meet him. She realized her mistake and quickly looked around to see her actual date. Most awkward Tinder date I've ever served. I was in a nightclub famous for having girl sex workers, and there was this guy with 2 women, one on each of his sides. Then his wife came in dressed as a H, got herself a glass cup and shattered it in his head. I never saw that much blood and yelling, but the guy was okay kinda. It was like a big Mexican soap opera. He kind of deserved it though. English is not my first language, so sorry if I sound offensive. The waiter here. This was at my first job when I was maybe 16 or 17 and didn't have many friends. I had been asked by co-workers to go bowling one afternoon. I was excited to go as I didn't really get to go hang out with anyone very much, and my crush was the one who asked me to go. I got the details from my crush via text and got to the bowling alley a little early to make sure I had the right place. I headed in and realized I was the first one there. Over the next hour, I called each person who had said they were going and each one sent me to voicemail. I'm pretty sure the alley staff thought I was being sketchy as heck too. I ended up going home and just never brought it up at work, even though I know my manager would have gone off on the staff for doing that to me. Dude had a soft spot for me and told me I was like the kid he never had. He was a really kind man. Server here. As many stories have said, a mom made a reservation for 20, I believe, for her kid's birthday. The mom arrived an hour early and we gave her the entire back section so she could decorate it however she wanted. She did a lot, like she really went all out for her kid, which me and my co-workers thought was the sweetest thing ever. Come party time at 2 PM and no one comes. More time goes by and nothing. By 3 PM nothing. The mom waits until 4 and comes to us crying that no one showed up. Obviously heartbroken, my manager says to them, "You guys order as much as you want and we will make you the biggest birthday dessert for your son." They had a giant feast, and while they were doing this, me and my co-workers made him a custom birthday card with all our names on it. We had an artist that worked there, so she drew him a bunch of Disney things on the card and laminated it. The most interesting part about this happened after with me. The kid was kinda quiet and he had a Switch that his mom gave to him as a present. Something about this kid reminded me of me as a kid, so I went up to their table and asked them how everything was. They were both in a better mood and spirits, and I started talking to the kid about video games and stuff for like 20 minutes. I found out later that he loves anime, more specifically Naruto. So we started talking about that, and I'm not sure if he knew anyone else that liked Naruto, but this kid lit up like I was the first person he's talked to about the show. It was the most heartwarming thing to ever happen to me. The whole entire time the mom was like, "You actually understand what he says about the show." So obviously the kid talked to his mom about it, but she had no idea what he was talking about. At some point the mother started crying because she was so happy that her kid had someone to talk to about his interests. As they were leaving, I went to my locker and got my car keys because I had a Naruto keychain on them. I took it off and I gave it to him and I said happy birthday. And this kid says this was the best birthday ever to his mom, and he said that he wanted to come back and eat at my restaurant soon. Most heartwarming thing to ever happen to me in my entire life. I don't know what happened to me after they left, but I just started crying from being overwhelmed with what happened. It still brings a tear to my eye anytime I think about it. TLDR. Mom reserved party of 24 son's birthday. No one showed. My manager gave them a giant feast. I talked to the kid about video games and Naruto and his day was made. Not me, but my mom. So basically, there's this sweet old man that comes down to the restaurant that my mom works at as a waitress, and it's usually him and his wife, and sometimes their grandson. But anyways, one day the man came in with his daughter and they told my mom that the wife had passed away. Then a couple of days later the daughter had started to show up regularly with the old man, and the daughter, one day before they ate, had told my mom that the old man had Alzheimer's and was starting to forget stuff here and there, but still remembered the important things. But he forgot about the wife's passing. So whenever they eat, he would wait for his wife to come, but the daughter would remind him that she wasn't feeling good. So every day they come, they eat their food and have a good time, but at the end of it, he would ask for the cake of the day whenever there's lemon cake, because she loved the lemon cake. I don't know how my mom does it, but it must be hard to do all this without crying. 6 years ago I returned to a town where I used to live. On a Friday night, a male friend asked me to meet him downtown as we hadn't seen each other in a few years. When I said that my daughter was using my car, he said he would send a cab to get me, and he did. He said he would meet me in front of the restaurant, since he lived much closer to downtown. It was a beautiful spring night, so I waited outside, watching people come and go. Minutes passed, then an hour and a half. Finally, I saw him running up the street toward the restaurant. He apologized all over the place, as we didn't yet have Uber or Lyft and the cabs were totally backed up. He didn't want to drive, because our surprise date was at an after hours speakeasy, but he'd finally jumped in his car and had to search around for parking on a weekend night. He'd been texting and calling, but I left my phone at home when I got in the cab. He asked why I waited so long and I said, because you said you would be here. We figured if we could survive that series of mishaps, then we could survive anything. We were married 5 months later and are about to celebrate our 6th anniversary. Hope this cheers some of you up. Not a waiter, bouncer. A girl had booked out the entire top floor of the club for her 18th, expecting about 200 packs. Drinks package for everyone. Place totally decorated. DJ, lights, security, 6 wait staff. She was there about 15 minutes prior to kickoff with her M&D. An hour later 3 people turned up and necked a couple of drinks and then left. That was it. She waited 5 more hours until we closed. The bar manager was really good about it and refunded most of the fee. We knocked most of the staff off early to save costs and I sent the security guys to other venues. But the humiliation must have been terrible. This older lady, looked about 65, came in every day and sat at the same booth and ordered the same thing, lemonade. She was always well dressed in the same outfit and had immaculate makeup. I would ask her what she wanted to eat. She would always reply with a big bright smile, "Not yet. I'm waiting for another guest." By the end of the night she would be so sad, she would stuff her napkin in her cup and get up and leave. Her makeup would be steaming down her face with great racking sobs. She would never tell me what was wrong, no matter how I asked. One day she came in and stayed till after closing. In walks a tall man dressed like a farmhand. He was dirty and smelled of horses. He walked over to the lady and gently picked her up, then carried her to his truck and settled her in. He came back in the pay for her lemonade, and I asked him why she was so sad every time she left. She had Alzheimer's. She was waiting on the man's grandfather on their 30th anniversary, but he never made it. He got into a car accident and died. She was still mourning the loss of her beloved husband 25 years later. She was 49 when he passed. When I met her she was 74. I hurt every time, just knowing that she relived that pain every day. I hope that she has found peace again in the arms of her beloved husband again. This is the saddest one here. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.